Hey, cheers to you, my friend. Good Friday to thee. Welcome to Korea, the channel, the broadcasting channel of athletics from all perspectives, highlighting the good, the bad, and the ugly. What about that for starters? As we say that, let me just digress a little bit from the trials in Eugene and kind of just share some light on the priorities of athletes, because I think when it comes to sports, the reason why we watch the athletics world and any other sport is because athletes' well-being, athletes' mental health and well-being and overall health of an athlete is paramount. It has preeminence. When you have to talk about that, I'll take it from that angle, because there's a tsunami, literally, in the athletic family, in the athletic fraternity, uh, namely GST and Michael Johnson. That tsunami is not fading, is not abating, is not being relegated to second news, is still the frontline news. I'll keep it here, front and center. It's important we get to the bottom of it. Michael Johnson, I saw an interview he did on some podcast, some YouTube somewhere. The savior has turned into a victim that is blaming investors for renegating and running away from the promises they had given of bankrolling the whole GST thing from the get-go. So, who is left standing? Michael Johnson. He has to answer the questions. And Michael Johnson is struggling to answer the questions. The question is the biggest question in the room, the elephant, the everything, is about the money, stupid. Bill Clinton is about economy, stupid. I said it right here. It's about the money. Where is the money for the athletes? We can talk until the sun just goes down on this Good Friday. But Michael Johnson is avoiding the question. He's not telling us what happened, where is the money. Let me tell you why that is my focus. Because it doesn't matter how these athletes perform. They have, they have bills to pay. They have families to feed. They have rent to pay. They have a lot of things that is predicated on them getting paid on time and their contracts being honored. And so they can live a life that they've worked so hard to get to. So when you tell these athletes that you promise them these prizes, $100,000 was the prize money. I said from the beginning, you can go back to this channel, guys. I was saying he overpromised, he overreached. He went too much for me. He was too close to the sun. He went Pinocchio on me. Michael Johnson was Pinocchio. I think ego drove him to promise all these things that I knew from the get-go he wasn't going to either deliver or sustain. It's a fact. You can look at my channel. I'm not bragging about it. There's some things you have to look a little bit careful, because if you've been in sport, I tried it during my time, people have a narrative that you can just look and just say, man, that is too good. You are not going to deliver on that. And I've kind of tried to give Johnson a break. But the more you give somebody a break, the more you realize it's about ego. In America, in the sporting world, there's this chest thumping business where you think you did it. Michael Johnson in 1996, he was the golden boy in Atlanta. He had gold shoes. He won the 400 incredible time. He's still the GOAT in that 400 meters. His time is still standing up there. What was his record? 19.7 was a 200 record in front of Frank Fredericks, a Namibian. I remember Halter Bolden was in that event, if I remember correctly, or John Drummond, I don't remember. But Michael Johnson, at the peak of his career, was arrogant too. And that hasn't been diminished over the years. It hasn't, because when you look at this league he tried to create, It was about Michael Johnson. He was about to claim a legacy for himself. So when he stood there and said, he's going to save track and field, he was a little bit specific and he became a specialist, which is an American thing. You become special, you specialize in sprinters. So he kind of said, no field events, it takes too much time, so I'm gonna just focus on track. So you see, Tara Davis Woodhall hammered Michael Johnson. He said, you're not inviting me because you don't want field events? You're going down. And I remember reading some things that Tara Woodhall went out after Michael Johnson. You can read that online. And she had a point. So did Noah Lyles, who yesterday when asked about the GST fallout and the debacle that is looming on the horizon, this is what he did. I told you so. Well, that's like, it sounds like a cliche. But some people were very hesitant to buy into the GST. And I think it's an American problem when it comes to track and field. We've had so many of these promises. The USA track and field promised that they're going to have what they call the golden tour of track and field as we move towards the 2028 Olympics in LA. They're going to have NY Classic, New York, LA Classic. I think there's another one in Atlanta. There's a Bermuda thing that was supposed to happen. Where are those Grand Prix? The only one standing is Prefontaine Classic right now. And I think some of these things I have noticed one thing, there's ego. A lot of ego that are very athletic driven. They are athletes standing in front of this, maybe a billboard and saying, I'm going to be the savior of this event. Let me give you an example. There's Holloway Pro Classic. Why is it named after him? There's Edwin Moses, the best hurdler back in the 80s. These legend guys. There's all these, and then there was a Bermuda, I think, was driven by Hazel Clark. I think this woman was a great 800-meter runner. So she became the face and the failure of that event in Bermuda. So these things are predicated. They're kind of for every event you see in America, and some of these events that have come up and they've kind of not withstood the test of time, is because it depends on that athlete and their ego and the way they can navigate how to recruit corporations and, like almost go to bed with them so that they may deliver on their promises. Let me give you another one. The New York one is Mark Wetmore, another runner back in the days. So when things happen that they become the face. When Michael Johnson is the face of GST, when it falls, he stands there butt naked, pretty much with his pants on his ankle, saying, no, listen, that's the problem. First of all, the arrogance of when they start these things. I'm going to deliver track and field. I'm going to be the one who's going to do it. Well, you say that, but you promised $30 million to be behind you to see this thing to the end. And one thing I found on some of the discussion that were going on online is that most of these investors and the people who are hired on board, they've all been paid except the athletes. Except who? The athletes. Because I think one thing you notice too is that people use athletes to self-promote. That's a fact. When you look at GST, you could tell it wasn't the athlete as much as you could see them having these fake checks that says $100,000 for winning. You're taking a camera, and Michael Johnson standing there with a smear on his face saying, yeah, here is a fake check for you. It's as fake and fraudulent as it gets right now. Grant Fisher gave a very profound, almost, I would say, is a tsunami-like statement. I think this thing will end up in court. I think it's going to take a legal path to redeem some of this money that is being owed to athletes. My fear is that it's going to be another stain in athletics. We've had doping as another stain. And when you start to have this bad PR, these these stories that just brings a cloud and a stain in athletics. Me as a fan, me as a person who is promoting athletes' well-being, it doesn't bode well. The future doesn't look good with Michael Johnson. Some people think it was a risk worth taking, but you don't take a risk at that high risk at the expense of the athlete, because some of these athletes they didn't even go to Europe to make their money. They didn't go to other leagues like Diamond League that have been historically successful because they were promised something that is, oh, we're going to the moon. Forget about being on Earth. The Earth is still a beautiful place. We just need to support what is already there. Maybe I would suggest a more collaboration and individualistic approach and promising messianic madness. Because when you think about Prefontaine, for instance, the reason why it's been traditionally successful as much as it has a name Prefontaine, the iconic athlete he was, Nike has been behind this success for so long. They, in fact, of course, proximity and names like Bowman, the late Bill Dillinger, who just passed away. All these traditions. Traditions matter in sport. Baseball is tradition. Football in America is tradition. We need tradition in track and field. And so when you talk of Prefontaine, why is the Mecca? Why is the place to go for track and field? Is because they don't ignore throwers. They don't ignore javelin. They don't ignore pole vault. They are very inclusive. They are broad. There's walking race today in the morning. Everything happens in Eugene. Is a sanctuary of athletes. When people go there, it happens. So when Michael Johnson says he's eliminating field events, you cannot be specializing in track and field. You have to broaden the base because there are people who want to see people throw, people jump, people do other events that they may have an interest in. Let me conclude by saying this. For me, this is bad tsunami for track and field. People might ignore it, might be the back page news, but it's still the headline news in these two Koreas, because the well-being of Grant Fisher, who spoke the other day when asked, I think the guy who dismissed it was, what is this guy, Kenny Benedek? He was like, they're gonna pay me. You see, you have to really, I don't know, some people really, of course, let's put it this way, some people are nonchalant about it. They're like, well, I know I'll be paid. But when you look at it closely, I see bankruptcy and I see legal issues pending on the horizon. That's what might happen here. Because when you're talking about $13 million and the investors just froze their accounts, does Michael Johnson have that kind of money? And I think Sebastian Coe, the world president, speaking the other day, should follow up on this, because this is a scam. This is a Ponzi. This is something that has gone rogue. And rogue needs some legal handwork. We need to have people looking into this thing closely. I know it's a private entity, you might say that, but the privacy of it doesn't mean we are going to leave our athletes hanging to dry. Gabby Thomas, Grant Fisher, and all these guys who participated in this, they know they are owed money. And some people are just trying to say, oh, let's give him time. Well, here is the time. Where is my money? That's the big question. So, honestly, it's not a success or not of the GST for me. Is the immediacy and the urgency of having to close this, maybe the final chapter of this GST, because if this is the beginning, you wonder who else is going to sign up next year. I doubt it's going to be many, because this is one of the worst starts you can have. Maybe I'm just too skeptical. Maybe I'm too pessimistic. Maybe I'm into traditional success like Prefontaine. Maybe that's all we need to do. Maybe support what is there and build it and expand it. Maybe have more meets in Prefontaine Classic. Mini and bigger. Maybe that's where we need to go. Anyway, That was me talking about Tsunami with GST and Michael Johnson. Show me the money, because subscribers are asking the same thing, viewers are asking the same thing. This dude is asking for the same thing. On a Good Friday, please don't be Judas. Show me the money. There you go. Enjoy your Friday. I'm heading to Eugene tomorrow morning. I'll catch up with the 400s, the 200s, and the rest of it. It's nice always seeing you out there. Keep subscribing, because that's what you do with the Riyadh owners. They're out there. Good day.